The Division of Criminal Justice is one of 14 agencies within the Department of Law and Public Safety. Recently, there was a shakeup in the division. Here with a report is correspondent Michael Aaron. Michael?
Thank you, Kent. The name Ed Steer is virtually synonymous with the Division of Criminal Justice. When the division was founded 12 years ago, Steer was one of its two chief attorneys. Today, it numbers 125 attorneys, and Steer is division director. So when Steer and two of his top deputies turned in their resignations early this month to their new boss, Attorney General Erwin Kimmelman, a lot of people began asking why.
I have the duty and responsibility under the Constitution and the law to administer this department, to direct its policies, to formulate new policies. In effect, it is my responsibility to innovate.
With this and other forceful statements he made that day, Attorney General Erwin Kimmelman overnight became the most controversial member of the Kaine administration. Kimmelman held this press conference to introduce a new chief investigator for the Division of Criminal Justice. But the session soon turned into a tense inquiry into the meaning of the Steer resignation. Kimmelman said he wanted to exert more control over the division, change the way its investigations are conducted, and shift the direction of those investigations. With Ed Steer at his side, Kimmelman denied that there was a rift between the two, and Steer kept silent. What is unclear to this day is whether Steer resigned because of Kimmelman's changes, or Kimmelman made the changes to force Steer to resign.
I've taken the position that I'm not prepared to discuss my reasons for leaving publicly, and I'm still adhering to that position.
But Ed Steer alone is not the issue in this story. What's at issue here is the future direction and vitality of the one agency of state government that really has its sights trained on organized crime and political corruption. It's an agency with a national reputation, one of the bright lights of law enforcement, an expert at Notre Dame called it just last week. And the concern is that it's being tinkered with by an attorney general who, like most attorneys general before him, has very little experience in the criminal field. The Division of Criminal Justice was born of controversy. In 1967, Life magazine branded New Jersey the most corrupt state in the nation. Organized crime, the article charged, had infiltrated the state legislature and local governments. These and subsequent charges touched off a wave of reform. From 1968 through 1970, the legislature passed a series of bills that gave the Attorney General broad investigative powers, power over all 21 county prosecutors, and made him the top law enforcement official in the state. One of these measures created a Division of Criminal Justice in the Attorney General's department. It was to be a semi-autonomous body with authority to wiretap, to grant immunity to witnesses, and to call its own grand juries. Because of its power and its independence, the division has been viewed as a potentially dangerous political weapon.
This division has more power and resources than any similar law enforcement organization anywhere in the United States. I say that with some degree of assurance that that's accurate. On the other hand, there is the potential for abuse of that power and those resources. And the public has got to be assured that whoever sits in this chair is going to exercise restraint.
Over the years, the division had its successes. It made inroads into organized crime, the great mob trial of 1980 in which the Boiardo gang was broken, the indictments and convictions of the Campeses and the Ziccarelli gang. The division also succeeded in ferreting out political corruption. Early in the Byrne administration, the division indicted Edward Krehbiel, Byrne's Secretary of State. Dozens of local politicians and office holders have been convicted of bribery and racketeering. Most recently, the division convicted Camden County Judge Peter Carusi of taking a bribe. Symbolic of its independence is that from 1976 until the opening of the new Justice Complex last fall, it operated out of a quiet corner of Princeton, far from the Attorney General and the Governor in Trenton.
It has not been subjected to political influences. It has withstood storms of criticism from people who have been the subjects of our investigations. Some people with pretty big toes have been stepped on.
Law enforcement experts generally praise the division. Charles Roggevin, a professor of law at Temple University, was head of President Johnson's Organized Crime Task Force and a chief state prosecutor in Massachusetts under Elliot Richardson.
I happen to share the view that it has been the best of its kind in the country, the best.
But the division has a number of critics, and chief among them is Attorney General Kimmelman. The Attorney General declined our requests for an interview, saying he felt he had said all he had to say on this subject. What Kimmelman has said is that he doesn't like the division's handling of recent cases, its caution in removing from office State Senator William Musto, the investigation into Atlantic City race fixing, in which at least one race was rigged by state investigators. Kimmelman has said it's time for a change. Specifically, he says he wants to change the way attorneys and investigators work an investigation. He wants the investigators to operate more independently, not hand in glove with the attorneys every step of the way. It will be more efficient, he says, but apparently it also contradicts one of the precepts of modern law enforcement.
It flies in the face of what has become the best operating model we know of. That is the integrated work of investigative agents and investigating and trial prosecutors, which is exactly what this division has built in the last 8 years. It's now a return, if I may use the phrase, to the days of yesteryear. What Mr. Kimmelman is apparently interested in doing is reversing the progress that has taken place in New Jersey and has become a model for other agencies around the country.
It's natural for an Attorney General to want his own person in a key position. What concerns many of the people we've spoken to, however, is that this Attorney General has also said he wants more control over the division. What's he going to do with that control, they want to know? Is he going to be as impartial with the division as people say his predecessors have been? At this point, it's too early to tell.
You know, Attorney General Kimmelman said something which I think is right. He said, should I be wedded to everything that happened in the past, or should I be free to innovate? And of course he ought to be free to innovate. I innovated when I was Attorney General, and so did all my predecessors. The real significance of what has happened here, if it is only the changing of personnel, is not terribly important. If it's more than that, if it's a reshaping of the system, or I don't have any reason to believe, but if it's a politicization of the division, then I think only in the long run will we know that, but the damages would be substantial.
The verdict is still out on what this shakeup in the division really means. What we've reported tonight are fears about the future of an important and powerful arm of state government. Only Erwin Kimmelman knows for sure what changes will take place in the division, and at this point at least, Mr. Kimmelman has decided to stop talking. Ken?
Thank you, Michael.